This is Cath McNamara. I'm the Faculty Student Experience Manager for Health and Life Sciences, and you're listening to the Academy's Developing Practice podcast.
Hi Cath, it's great to have you here with us today. I'd like to start by asking you about your role and how you came to be a student experience manager at the university. So can you let us know what is your professional background to this point?
Hi Matt. Hi Alex. Thank you for inviting me to speak with you today. Well, it's probably quite different from anything you might expect. My degree is in art history.
Oh, right.
So how do you get from art history to a faculty student experience manager? It's quite an interesting question. So I studied in London, and after I finished my degree I was fortunate enough to have the opportunity to work in Westminster, and I was a constituency caseworker in the office of the Member of Parliament for Peckham. In that capacity, obviously I was seated in this great power, the sort of the hub of the whole country, the decision-making heart of the country. But in my role in the constituency, I was dealing on a daily basis with the actual impacts on real-life people of the decisions that were being made right next to the office that I sat in. And that gave me a real insight, understanding and interest into the relationships between strategy, action and impact. From there I took that into local government and started working in policy roles. So it's a lot about translating policy into practice, and I worked in local government for about 10 years in those sorts of capacities. Through that I developed into network management and partnership development, and I did for a number of years manage basically a voluntary partnership of organisations, the purpose of which was to develop strategy to deliver improvements in the local area.
Okay, where was that?
I started in Sefton and I moved to West Lancashire.
Right, okay. So you're travelling north?
Yeah. Then the economic crash hit.
Yeah.
And the squeeze on the public sector. And I had a young child at the time, and I thought I needed to redirect my career to a place where there was perhaps more job security. So I took the leap into higher education.
Right.
I'd done a master's at Liverpool whilst I was working, so there was kind of a familiarity about the place. I knew that I liked the kind of the feel of the university, the campus, and certainly being in the city, having grown up here. So it felt like a really sort of logical, natural step. And I took up a role in strategic planning. In that role, I was based in the foundation building for about 6 years. And about partway through that, I was asked to project manage Strategy 2026, the development of the new strategy for the university. And when I did that, I suddenly realised that I'd kind of moved away from having that knowledge and insight into the impact of decision making upon people. Mm-hmm. So for the first time, really, I spoke to a student, which I hadn't done in 4 years at the university. I was engaging with academics, which I'd only done to a very limited degree. And I say it just really reminded me of why my career had gone in that direction, what interested me, what enthuses me, and what direction I might like to go back to.
Right.
So I had a good long think, and I realised that probably being in central professional services wasn't the place to do that. And I considered the various roles that there were across the university. By this time I was facing health and life sciences in my role in strategic planning, and I was starting to get a really much better understanding of the mechanics of faculties and schools, and I realised I wanted to be a lot more involved in that. About 6 months later, the faculty student experience manager role was advertised, and when I saw the job description I just knew it was the role for me. Fortunately, some other people agreed with me. And I got the job, and that really what I kind of promoted in my interview was that understanding of the joining up between strategy, decision making, implementation, and sort of being on the receiving end of decisions.
Yeah.
I think that's something that's really interesting, because I think in loads of spheres of life, don't we? We have that strategic level where policy is set, and then we don't really join that up with what's happening on the ground, and that leaves people feeling very out of control. So I guess that's what you're talking about in terms of trying to join the two.
Absolutely. So one of the other things that happened was, following Strategy 2026, obviously I was no longer project managing it. That project had finished, and I was back in my strategic planning role, and I became acutely aware that everyone knew what Strategy 2026 was, but there wasn't really, if you asked people, they weren't really sure how what they did on a day-to-day basis fitted within that much broader picture. And at the same time, there's a staff survey done, and the results of it did echo that. So when I came into the faculty student experience manager post, that was something that I was really keen to address, was to make those links and provide opportunities for people to understand how what they do is a valuable contribution to the bigger picture.
Great. So I'm guessing the Strategy 2026, you were working with staff in terms of helping them to understand the impact of that strategy on how they operationalise it. But was there also some work with students as well? Because I guess they're the receivers in terms of the strategy that you were implementing.
So my involvement was at the strategy development stage, and it was really about speaking with all kinds of different people. I think I had face-to-face conversations with over 1,000 people during the consultation process, and that was just one of the pieces of consultation that we did. We had all sorts of other media to gather views through, and during that it became clear that there wasn't a full understanding of the direction that we wanted to go in. People had really strong opinions about what direction we should be going in, but people weren't clear on what direction we were going in. So that was sort of what framed the development of Strategy 2026. Then the implementation side of things sort of followed that, and personally I was quite sad not to be involved in that. Having been involved in the strategy development, I would have loved the opportunity to be more involved in the implementation, but then moving to the student experience manager role, that gave me that opportunity to start translating the strategy into practice on the ground.
Yeah, so it's then up to you to be part of the people who are embedding that.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Okay. So tell us a little bit about that role. What, on a day-to-day-ish basis, that probably doesn't help, but on a regular basis, what kind of things do you do in terms of your current role?
So no 2 days are the same, and that's one of the things that I really enjoy about it. I love a challenge, and I love variety, and I love to always be learning new things. I think that I would describe the role as being multifaceted in terms of you face different directions. So a lot of what I do is representing the faculty facing the university. So I will sort of attend many discussions and decision-making meetings where the voice of the faculty needs to be heard. In doing that, I work very closely with the other faculty student experience managers as well. So we have our own kind of community of practice across the university.
So how many are from this?
So there's one in each faculty.
Okay.
And there are also now student experience managers within central SAS.
Right.
But their roles are around specific functions, whereas we're sort of all-encompassing across the board.
Right.
Literally anything that can be loosely classified as student experience can land on our desk, which when you think about it...
Yeah, it's massive.
is a lot.
Yeah.
So they're representing the faculty voice at university, trying to influence on behalf of the faculty. There's also them facing back in to the faculty and sort of working with schools to understand the implications of implementing various decisions, making sure that those schools have a voice that's heard in that decision. I think that's absolutely key to the student experience manager role. So other key aspects of the role are around things like academic quality and compliance. I have responsibility for making sure that our Faculty Academic Quality and Standards Committee runs effectively and supporting the chairs to do that. Other things that are unique to my faculty is around things like fitness to practice of our clinical students and making sure that the sort of policies and processes that we have in place to protect vulnerable people, patients, but also ensure that we're doing right by our students work effectively. That's absolutely crucial.
Yeah.
So can you tell us, because it sounds like a really varied job, what are the things that get you out of bed in the morning? What are the key aspects of your job that really excite you?
I love networking. I really enjoy working with people who are outside of my immediate area. I mean, I love working with the people in my immediate area as well. I have to say that. The team in the directorate is absolutely outstanding. But I look for opportunities to see what other people are doing or think about how other people in other roles could work with me to help me do what I want to deliver better. And that's one of the reasons I know you, Matt.
Oh yes, on the PPC, yeah. I created a module to try and aid the awareness of strategic planning.
Yeah.
And then we made some fun stuff, didn't we? We made an interactive quiz with a leaderboard, a calendar that people could rotate, and all sorts of things. And then we worked together on the professional services conference.
Yeah, 1PS. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. When we had you going up a snakes and ladders board. Yeah. Which we animated quite appropriately. Yeah. So yeah. That is how we know each other.
And I guess subsequently we've worked together on developing training for staff across the faculty, which otherwise wouldn't have happened or maybe wouldn't have been delivered in as effective and as efficient a way.
Thank you very much. That sounds like a compliment. I'll take
it is
that.
A compliment, yeah.
I mean, my role in that was to ensure that whatever was commissioned absolutely met the need of what was going on the ground. And I think from the feedback that you've had, that it definitely does meet that need. And in fact, I know it does because the people who weren't involved in it are now screaming for it. So
yeah, I've got a waiting list.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So other things that kind of inspire me, it sounds very, very cheesy, but it's making a difference. I kind of need to know that when I'm coming into work every day and working very hard, as I do, that it's going to make a positive difference to somebody somewhere, whether that's what's happening in our schools with our students, or whether it's in my immediate team in their experience of everyday life working. That's really, really important to me.
Brilliant. So a lot of what you're describing, in fact, the clues in the title, is to do with the student experience.
Yeah.
So you're doing lots of different things with lots of different people, all with a view to enhancing the student experience. So I just wondered if we could reflect a little bit on, obviously student experience is dominant in our narrative at the moment in terms of HE. Thinking about the NSS and the TEF and all of the metrics that we're having to think about on a daily basis now. Can you just explain to me why you think student experience is so important and why it's become so dominant in a lot of what we're doing in higher education?
So I think, you know, there's definitely a place for metrics. They are important because they show us whether what we're doing well. But really, I think that what should drive us, what should drive our decision making, is a conviction of and a belief that what we're doing is going to be for the benefit of our students, or thinking more broadly around impact on the local communities, for health activity and what have you. If we're doing all of that right, then the metrics will follow. In terms of the sort of the change in the narrative around student experience, if I think back to when I was at university, I was the last year that went to university without having to pay a fee. And I think that was an absolute pivotal moment in higher education. I think that going to university continues to remain a really great opportunity to people, but it carries with it a much higher level of risk for the individual. At the same time, we've had the economic crash, the job market is a lot more competitive, and student experience has ceased to be just about what degree you leave university with and the memories that you might create, albeit a bit foggily along the way. But that's still really important. But now it's a relatively short window within an individual's life to gain a much broader array of experience that will shape them, shape their outlook, and shape how they're perceived in the jobs market.
So what are we talking about there? Give me some specifics.
So employers now, whereas a few years ago perhaps it was enough to have a degree. On a job application, or on a person spec, it would say must have a degree.
Yeah, you just wanted your 2-1, your first, it was on your CV.
Exactly, and that was it, tick. Oftentimes it didn't even really matter what subject that it was in. Now it's a lot more about the individual, what experiences they've had that shape them as a person beyond the classroom. So things like perhaps going abroad would be an example. I think there's a very clear expectation that when you leave university you should have quite a lot of work experience, whereas that possibly wasn't the case going back a few years. It can be about what you might do in a more philanthropic capacity. It's you as a person that augments the academic qualification that you've received.
Great. So it's kind of thinking of that kind of holistic understanding of development and thinking of the whole person rather than that piece of paper that they get at the end, which is really important, but it's thinking about all those kind of soft skills as well, I guess.
Yeah. And what's going to set you apart from the pack when it comes to entering the jobs market.
Yeah, an already competitive market.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's really interesting to hear. And one of the things, well, I suppose the main thing that we've got you here to talk about today is the creation of the HLS Student Experience Professional Service Network. Please tell me I got that right.
You did.
Good. And how did that come to fruition? And what are its aims at the moment?
Okay, well, I probably could have spent a bit more time thinking about a catchy name for it.
Or an easy acronym.
Yeah. But I was that enthused by the idea that I just wanted to get it up and running, and at the end of the day, it is exactly what it proclaims to be. It's a network for student experience staff, so that's any member of staff from professional services in the faculty of HLS whose role in some way has a student face.
Great, so
give us student impact.
Give us some examples of that.
So it can be anyone from the people who sit at the school office desks who are taking inquiries from students on a daily basis, right through to people who are in a more managerial capacity who have responsibility for process and function. It's a really informal network. There's no 3-line whip at all to attend, and It's a thematic network. Themes are based around either priorities that I've identified in my university-facing role, or those that are suggested by actual members of the network, things that they want to hear more about. And people attend as and when they wish to, either whether the theme relates to their role or if it's something that they would be interested in developing knowledge of.
Brilliant. And what would it, is it a network meeting or is it virtual or?
It's an actual meeting that generally takes place once a month, and the format of it tends to be an invitation to someone else, probably from Central Professional Services, but you know it's certainly not limited to that, to talk about any area of development that people within the network are going to have responsibility for either managing or implementing. And it's really to put the decision makers in touch with the implementers. So what I was talking about earlier, it's making those connections. Purpose of that is twofold really. It's one, to make sure that decisions are informed by operational knowledge and expertise. And it's also to make sure that those who are implementing it feel that they've had a say in things that will impact on them in their everyday working lives.
I love this. This really sings to me because you're sharing best practice. Sometimes you might be solving problems. It's an active learning style network that you've got, and it's well attended, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, attendance does depend on what we're talking about.
Yeah.
So, and that's where I come back to, it's absolutely not expected that people have to come every month when the topic that's being discussed might not be in any way relevant to them. That's just a waste of everyone's time, and my feeling is that then people disengage. So it's really important to me that people see the value and relevance of it to them, and they attend on that basis. So the network, 1 month it could be a really, really small meeting of 5 people. Another, it could be about 40 or 50. So, you know, we've been going through Project Shape recently. The network's been a really important vehicle to seek views from our student experience staff to influence decision making there. And that's literally standing room only.
Yeah, I bet.
And then other things, so if it's about timetabling or something like that, that would be 4 or 5. But even within that really small group, those 4 or 5 people would not normally talk to each other. And they have, really sort of helpful discussions about issues that are they're coming across, with a view to either saying, do you know what, this really is an issue, you're all facing it. I, in my capacity, will take that back up to the university and see if we can find a solution. Or it can be in their discussions between themselves, they find the solutions themselves.
So what I really love about this is obviously you've reflected on your past experiences and you've seen that kind of disconnect sometimes between policy makers and strategy and then people who are actually trying to operationalise the work on the ground. And it's lovely that you're trying to link those two groups of people so that they can both inform each other in terms of their practice. I'm guessing there's some challenges with that. So I wondered if you could talk us through maybe some of the challenges and what you've done to overcome some of those.
So I guess first and foremost, in my role, I have a faculty role, but I have no line management responsibility for the student experience staff outside of my immediate team. I think we can all appreciate how very, very busy these teams are. So the first challenge was to kind of convince people that there was a value to them spending some of their time doing this. And I was very fortunate that another challenge that I might have had was getting engagement from the decision makers to come along and speak with people. But it's been really positively received. And the first network meeting was actually launched by Paul Redmond. And I don't know if you've ever seen Paul speak, but he's really inspiring. He's great at motivating people. He always has this slightly different way of looking at something that you've never perhaps thought of before, and it really kind of gets people on board with wanting to be, I guess, a part of that area of activity. So Paul's support for the network from day one was integral to being able to kind of mobilise people, I guess.
Yeah, great.
To be part of the network and then start seeing that on a regular basis there was a real value to this.
Brilliant.
So he really set the scene.
He did set the
So
scene.
I guess then the network could then carry on that footing, rather than if you create a network, sometimes, and this can be a good thing because it can be quite cathartic at times, but sometimes a network will start voicing all its issues, and there'll be individual issues, and there'll be oh yeah, I do this and I do this, and it's painful. But I guess what it sounds like is because you got off on such a strong footing with it being around collaboration and best practice and positive things, it's been able to carry on in that manner. Is that fair?
Yeah, I mean, I think that first and foremost, the feedback I had from people was that they found it very refreshing to have the opportunity to have people with that level of seniority who they normally would never see come and actually speak to them and ask them for their views and be interested, and those views to be taken away and hopefully helping shape the decisions. So I think that first and foremost has been a real sort of culture change.
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah. Well, that leads me on to another question that I was going to ask you about. What's happened to the wider faculty based on what's happening in that community that you've created? Because it does sound more like a community than a network, to be honest with you. So have you found the impact? Because I know you love looking for impact.
I like that you're calling it a community, actually. I mean, I do describe it as a community of practice. Yeah. But it is a really nice way to look at it, that it's sort of people working, existing, collaborating together. In terms of wider faculty impact, at this stage I'm not 100% sure. I do know elsewhere in the university the model has been sort of used as a example of or sort of tailored to other faculty. So for example, HSS, they now have a network as well, and across the university Paul's recently established the Student Symposium, which basically really complements the community's work that's going on at faculty and school level.
Can you explain to us what that is, the Student Symposium?
Student Symposium is very similar to the Student Experience Networks, except it's for student experience staff across the whole university, including SAS. So what that does is bring everyone together on a less frequent basis, but where there's a compelling case for communicating something across the board rather than on a more devolved or localised level. So I think it's really important we have the two, because we do need to keep providing people with the local voice, but also remembering that, or helping people to see that they're part of a big team that spans the whole university.
So thinking about those challenges, have you had any problems with people that have used that network or that opportunity to have that dialogue with senior management in a negative way?
So I actually believe that it's really good to provide people with a safe place to vent their frustrations. I don't necessarily see that as a negative process. I see it as something that can deliver very positive outcomes. Because I think that it's only by doing that you can identify the barriers that really exist. And it's only by doing that you can find a way to overcome them.
Yeah.
So I've always been clear from, I think, the first 5 minutes of the first network that was an arena to do that, but it always has to be done in a respectful way. And there's not yet been an occurrence where anybody has done anything in a way that I would say was not professional or respectful. I think the trickier thing is building trust in relationships and convincing people that by participating in the network, they can actually change things. There's a point to them engaging in the discussions, and so that they will, wherever possible, either see how they've influenced something for the better or come away with an understanding of why some things might not be able to change. And in doing so, I find that people are sharing solutions between themselves, as I mentioned earlier, and across schools in a way that simply wouldn't have happened if the network didn't exist. I think it's probably more custom and practice to have structures like this where it's within an administrative line management structure. So to have sort of discussions and away days and what have you within a team that it's recognised within.
Yeah, we work in silos, don't we?
Exactly. And what the network did that was different was look outside of those silos and actually see the breaking down of those barriers and the making connections across the board as a really positive way to find solutions.
Great, and there's so much strength in that. I mean, we're probably recording our 10th podcast now, aren't we, Matt? But we have learned so much from this, just hearing people's stories and hearing what people are doing across the university. You learn so much from that, don't you, in terms of just challenging yourself to reflect on other people's practice and then enhancing what you're doing.
Absolutely.
Great, that's so interesting, thank you. So can you tell us what you think is next for you and for the network?
So in our faculty, we actually have the potential for quite a significant period of change, as we've had a belt and braces review as Project Shape, and the implementation of that strategic review will be rolled out over the next certainly 12, even longer, perhaps months. In terms of the network, I think that communities of practice have a really crucial role to play during periods of transition, both in terms of sort of continuing that role as a vehicle for communication and feedback that it's already done in this process, but also providing that forum for people to get together to talk about what's happening in their areas, talk about potential change, think through implications and sort of raise any issues or concerns that they may have about the process.
Well, Cath, it's been great to have you with us today. We'd like to finish each podcast with 3 or 4 take-home tips that the listeners could reflect on in terms of their own personal practice. If you could give us 3 or 4 tips, what do you think they would be?
Okay, well, perhaps unsurprisingly, communication's key, in my opinion. I can't think of a scenario that is better resolved by someone sitting in a room on their own, struggling through it. Whether that be about finding opportunities to influence, whether it's about sharing best practice, looking for solutions to problems, or even dealing with your own personal issues. It's very cheesy, but I believe it's always better to talk. And as part of that comes tip number 2, which is building strong relationships and networks. I think it's really important to establish those outside of your immediate area. It's how you learn more. From my own experience, it provides a great level of support as well, and strengthens your ability to influence in other forums too. So that would definitely be a top tip of mine. And finally, again, it might sound a bit twee, but I really can't emphasise enough the importance of respecting and valuing everybody's contributions to activity. You can achieve so much more through a strong team culture than you can where people are perhaps more concerned about exactly what contract they have and what contract you have or what grade I am or what grade you are. For me, it's not about that. It's all of us are in that boat rowing in a particular direction, and if any one of us jumps out the boat, then it's going to significantly impede our progress. So that's how I like to think about things, and it's definitely something that has not only improved the results that I feel I've been able to deliver professionally, but it also is great for your professional happiness. It's good to come into work with a team that you feel a part of and that you're working with. So that is my final top tip for today.
And I think that's what's lovely about all three of those is I guess all three underpin what you've done with the network. So communication, strong relationships, respect and value. That's the ethos of what you've created.
Absolutely.
Lovely.
Well, thank you for coming in, Cath. So that was our conversation with Cath, who clearly loves to network. I hope that comes across on the podcast that she has a real passion for this. And it was just great to hear about how she thinks around getting people to collaborate together can ultimately not only help the service or whatever they're delivering, but actually it helps themselves to achieve more than what would normally be the sum of their parts, do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've both seen that in our work, haven't we?
Yeah.
That when people collaborate, they achieve so much more than they could on their own. And Cath's obviously seen that in her own work, which is great. I really enjoyed the conversation as well. I particularly like what she was talking about in terms of kind of joining up the kind of strategic level with the operational level. So thinking about the policy that is obviously agreed at quite a top level, but then thinking about what that means for the people on the ground. And she's obviously seen that in her work in the civil service and in local government, and she's bringing that expertise to her work here in higher education. So lots of good thinking there in terms of how we join up practice.
Yeah, and how we get people to collaborate and work beyond silos.
Yeah,
Some key
absolutely.
messages there.
So let us know what you think about that. It would be great if you gave us some feedback. Please do tweet us on @LiveUniAcademy. We'd love to hear from you. And also, if you want to do some further reading on this, we've linked to some resources on the website, which is liverpool.ac.uk/the-academy. And there's lots of good stuff on there for you to further your thinking.
Also, if you can please rate and review in iTunes or simply subscribe to the podcast via platforms such as Spotify, Google Podcasts or YouTube. Bye for now.